anyone that thinks that in the next 10 years or so we'll see the end of Boko Haram is living in a dream world. We still have a long way to go. And the fact of the matter is that insecurity, such as the ones that the Boko Haram are espousing, the ideologies are rooted in people. And it is not by chance that Boko Haram started in the northeast, in Borno areas in specific, because there were grounds there that made the Boko Haram to thrive, to flourish. Now, until you remove the reason where Boko Haram flourish in places like Borno and Yobe, parts of Adamawa, even Kano, you cannot end Boko Haram. What do I mean? In the first place, we have a situation today where the Boko Haram does a lot of harm to people. The harm that it does to people, it started from the perspective that they did not want certain types of religious faith to exist in the area, in their localities. The very first video of Shekau was to the effect that they wanted all non-Muslims to leave the area. They didn't, and they were going to fight against any Muslim who did not join them in chasing out infidels from the area. They said they wanted Sharia all over the country. They wanted the whole country to become a Muslim country. That is what they said. Now, instead of confronting the issues, we took it as a military case. We send in soldiers to go and fight. Now, when these soldiers go to fight, in the first place, the soldiers cannot see, there's no difference between the ordinary citizen and the Boko Haram in the way they walk, in the way they do things. So we had very serious casualties among our military, and to the extent that the Boko Haram overwhelmed and occupied certain areas. Now let me tell you, no foreign force, no ideology that is not wanted can occupy any village for a long time without any basis for staying there. The classical theory and practice of guerrilla warfare is that you live and work with people who agree with what you are doing. So it is very clear. So the approach that we have had so far is that let us drive them out. But who are you going to drive out? If there's a general belief among the political groups, in the people in the political group of that area, that they don't want people of certain faith to live with them. That question has not been answered. Now, if you come now and say, let's fast track to the issue of you want to set up an agency to talk to these people, to take care of these repentant people. The question you ask yourself, have they renounced their ideologies that made them go to fight in the first place? How do you determine that these people have changed and they will no longer do what they went in the first place to do? So the second thing is international best practice, historical best practice, is that you only do what you call DDR, demobilization, demilitarization, and rehabilitation, disarmament. You only do them when the group that has decided to launch that campaign, it decides that it wants to lay down arms. The group knows where its soldiers and foot soldiers are. The commanders know. So they bring those people and they are disarmed. The question you will ask, among the repentant Boko Haram, what quantity of arms did they get from them? Number one. Question you will ask, the second question you will ask is that where have they led you to show that they are repentant to go and take over the areas that they were occupying in the first place? So there are too many gray areas in the program that is being undertaken, and so my own opinion strictly is that we have not yet decided whether we want to fight Boko Haram or not. Unfortunately, the insecurity in the country, the crisis that we have in the Niger Delta that has abated and allowed us to increase our oil production, it has a different context, completely different context from the context of Boko Haram. Secondly, the major commanders of the Niger Delta militants came and themselves negotiated with government. We have not seen any commander of Boko Haram come to negotiate with the federal government. So who are we talking to? And the other fact of the matter is that if you look at the widening scope of so-called Fulani herdsmen attack on villages and settlements in the Middle Belt areas, if you look at the widening scope of the attacks of so-called bandits and cattle rustlers in the Northwest, if you look at the fact that increasingly in the last 2-3 months, the technically defeated Boko Haram has resurged to the extent that we're even hearing that they wanted to attack the major barracks in Maiduguri, disguised, even though the army has refuted that story. But just the thought that they have the audacity to do that, it gives you the impression that we still have a long way to go. And I think it's important that we come down and sit down and think about what is happening, rather than assume that we have gone somewhere. We haven't gone far. The stories that we're hearing, the press statements by some people that even places like Abuja have been infiltrated and so are not even heard about attacks on National Assembly. They were all in the newspapers. They don't tell good stories about our capacity and capability in dealing with this problem. And I think we started from the wrong foot, that in the first place we should have confronted Boko Haram from its ideology. That is why I think that the first step to confronting Boko Haram is for the community and religious leaders in the areas that Boko Haram has been operating to come out and talk to Boko Haram and talk to their people and their young people. Because we have a situation now where like the Khan chairman of Michika, who was killed, was shot by a boy that was 10 years old. That's said to be 10 years old. Now, this 10-year-old boy, how many other 10-year-old boys? I mean, this boy was born a few years after Boko Haram started. That means that there are younger people, how many other people below him that are being socialized into this Boko Haram ideology? That is what we are not confronting, in my opinion.
Well,